Guess who's back? Back again. Actually, I'm just kidding. I already used this intro before. But ladies and gentlemen, guess who's back for real this time? Psych, that's Cat, because we are not for real this time. But we had to make an emergency podcast episode because Damian Lillard just got traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. And what better way to start off the season than with a crazy blockbuster trade? And you already know we had to hop on a quick stream. You know what I mean? We had to put our lives on pause for this. We had to sacrifice for our audience. So here we are. I'm kidding. Um, Big things low-key happening in the future, though, low-key, maybe theoretically. So stay tuned for that. But as of right now, though, we're back for this Damian Lillard trade. So I guess without further ado, let's get it rolling. So as of today, about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, or something like that.
Like 2:30.
Yeah, 2:30. The boy Adrian hopped on Twitter, not X, and he said, my boy Milwaukee, the Brewskis called up the Blazers and was like, "Yo, we'll take Damian Lillard." And they sent out Drew Holiday in return, and it was a 3-team trade that also involved Phoenix as well, which they got Nurkic for your boy, my boy, DeAndre Ayton. So a pretty interesting trade nonetheless. We'll dive into the details in a bit, but initial thoughts, gents. What are we thinking about this trade, and why are the Cleveland Cavaliers screwed for the next 2 years, and why should they trade Donovan Mitchell next summer? Thank you. Please start this one. Thank you.
My initial thought was just thank God he finally got traded. We don't have to hear any of these rumors anymore that we've been hearing all summer long, just because there's been no content, nothing going on whatsoever in the NBA. A very dry, boring offseason after like the first week of free agency.
Yep.
So thank God this is finally out of the way. Maybe we'll start to see some more free agents move now that one of the biggest dominoes has fallen. But initial thoughts. Dame to Milwaukee is kind of insane considering that him and Giannis are going to be a duo. They've kind of like hinted at wanting to play for each other for like a few years now. Like even when there's from the previous All-Star game when Giannis picked Dame before Drew, his own teammate, in the All-Star draft, and then LeBron was like kind of like, "Hey, is that tampering?" Like they've kind of had this like little. They've kind of been throwing hints back and forth at each other about wanting to play together for a while now. So now it's finally happening. I think Giannis's comments, what was that like a month ago now, about potentially leaving Milwaukee and all that. I think that kind of fueled the Bucks to make this move. Like, we got to do something big to make him want to stay here. We just signed Middleton to this extension, and we got Brook back. So we got to maximize our roster right now while we can, while these guys are still all in their primes. So, yeah, Milwaukee's going to be a major player. I mean, they already were, but now this just brings them to a whole new level. Dame's finally got a supporting cast around him that can, defend the pick and roll. So that's going to be a really crazy duo, him and Giannis.
Yeah, it's pretty that wasn't the team I was thinking of that was going to pull this off, because I was just in class and then I decided to check my phone and I saw people going crazy. I'm like, oh, it finally happened. And then people were saying the Bucks, so I was kind of confused. And then I saw the Suns involved. I'm like, there's no way that Dame was on the Suns, right? And thank God that wasn't the case. But a lot to unpack. I was expecting this trade to go down before training camp at least, but like with all these we can get into the grade soon, I guess. I mean, you can't really fully grade a trade until they play together, but the initial reactions, we could talk about that. But I am pretty surprised. I think the Blazers got a good enough haul. They could also get more if they trade Drew, which seems like it's going to be the case. So hopefully they could build more on that, because they got a pretty young core. But either way, pretty shocked. And Giannis and Dame, all I got to say is I'm happy that's not in the West, but y'all got that, because that's a pretty crazy lineup with Dame actually has some kind of like help with the pick and roll and the interior defense, and just Giannis could kind of back off and doesn't have to, like, he's still kind of young, but he doesn't have to had that burden on his shoulders. He has to score every time. He has even more options, but letting Drew go was kind of crazy. I wasn't expecting that to happen, but you can't be too mad at Dame. And they lost Grayson Allen, but if you're talking about Dame, then you can't really be too mad.
Get that thug out of Milwaukee. But with that considered, I want to ask you guys this because, with this trade, Middleton is obviously the third star now, going from the second option to third option. So my question to y'all is, do you think that Milwaukee is officially the Eastern Conference representative in the NBA Finals next June?
I mean, if I had to bet on a team right now, I would say yes, based on the fact just that you have Dame and you have Giannis already, which theoretically, just the inside-out play from those two is just going to be unstoppable if you think about it. You have Dame on the perimeter, one of the best shooters in the league, outside of Steph Curry. And then you have Giannis, who is one of the most dominant interior forces in the league we've seen probably since Shaq. You either have to choose. You either got to send a guy on Giannis, leaving Dame, Middleton, Brook Lopez open for threes, or you got to send another guy on Dame off a pick and roll and then leave Giannis just running to the rim. There's just thinking about it right now, you're going to have an insane offense next year, regardless of who that fifth guy is in the lineup. And then, Middleton last year coming off the injury, he didn't really look himself for most of the season. He kind of picked up in the playoffs a little bit more, whereas Drew was struggling. But, minimizing Middleton's role a little bit more now that you have Dame to bring up the ball, and then having Giannis not have as much ball handling duties. Middleton could just be a spot up guy half the game now pretty much, and then you could have him run with the bench units and stuff like he was last year toward the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, just there's a lot of this opens up a lot of possibilities now with their rotations. And although their bench is I don't want to say thin because they have some good guys off their bench still, like Portis, Jay Crowder,
if he emerges.
Malik Beasley they just signed. They have some decent guys coming off their bench still, but you can spread these. You can spread out these Giannis, Middleton, Dame now a lot more. So I don't know. I just like this all around for Milwaukee. I think their offense is going to be elite.
Feel like you could at the two spot for that starting lineup, it's either Malik or Pat Connaughton.
Yeah,
which I feel like
two good options right there. Pretty nice wing shooters right there. So.
Yeah. You're pretty set with the Middleton, Giannis, Brook. That defense alone, you could afford one of them. So Malik isn't really playing defense like that. Pat Connaughton, not the best, but you could afford that 3-point shooter on that spot. That's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Obviously, losing Drew is as that point of attack defender that they've had all these past however many seasons now in that championship run. Obviously that's going to be a blow to your defense, but adding a guy like Dame to your offense, that just you have to make that move 100 times out of 100, especially with Giannis showing him that you're committed to building a championship core around him. Hoping that he'll want to re-sign when his time's up on his next deal. So, what was I about to say? Oh yeah, and then this kind of does open up the possibility as well that some other free agents might want to, that are left hanging might want to come to Milwaukee too. There's still guys out there like Terrence Davis. I feel like that's the first name that comes to mind. That would be a pretty solid fit for that roster that kind of needs that 2-3 wing type player.
I think Javonte's still a free agent.
Javonte Green, yeah.
There's still quality names that are still on the board. So, yeah, exactly. I think Milwaukee definitely has options to go from here on out, but I don't think something that they're going to kick themselves over because you're getting Dame Lillard, and then on top of that, their depth is pretty serviceable enough or pretty solid enough that you can mix and match lineup. So I think they're definitely good on that department. I think, but my question to you guys again, well, not really again, but I guess from here on out, what does Miami? Well, actually, we can talk about Miami. We can talk about other teams after this, but my question is now, what do you guys think Miami does from here on out? Because in my opinion, their whole expectation was we're getting Dame. And then we started getting I mean, it could be Mickey Mouse reports, it could be official reports, but we started getting news about how Miami is getting a little bit more. I don't know. I don't want to say cocky, but a little bit more comfortable in terms of, who they would potentially give up. There one day they're like, oh, we don't want to give up, like Jovic or something like that, or like an X amount of picks, or they're like, we don't have to give up all this because Portland's at the mercy of Dame or whatever. So, um, I think especially because we talked about it, private before the pod started. It's like Miami just lost so much functional depth that got them to the finals, and the playoffs, and it's just the team, that core that really got you there is really just gone now. I mean, you still got Kevin Love and Martin there and all that, but still, it's just you're losing Max Strus, you're losing Zeller,
Gabe
you're
Vincent.
losing Vincent, like you're losing a lot of key guys, and you really just replace them with Josh Richardson and RJ Hampton, like, you know what I mean? So my question to y'all is, what do y'all think Miami does? Are they going to even make the playoffs? Like, I know we said that last year, but like, again, like this year, it's just like a skeleton crew of a team. It's like, what do y'all think they can do? And do you think they're going to try to be aggressive throughout the season, try to get someone else, or like, do they just want to like ride it out and see what they can do next summer and then probably like disband it if anything?
I feel like looking at the contracts, like Duncan Robinson obviously is the big elephant in the room with 18 million a year. Like I feel like they could offload some people, but like the playoffs, yeah, I think they can still make it. Like they still have enough talent with like Jimmy Bam, Hero if he's still gonna be there, and Kyle Lowry. Like it's still and Martin. There's still enough talent to get to the playoffs to make it far. I don't really necessarily know because they
Are
did
they a
lose a lot
playing
of key
team or a
guys.
playoff team?
Well, let me see. I gotta look at the teams in the East
It's
first.
just the
So
thing with them is on paper they should be a playoff team, but then you every season, like during the regular season, Jimmy's kind of like coasting for majority of the regular season. So it's like you never know with them.
Yep.
It seems like they never really care about where their playoff seeding is as long as they're in. I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of almost like screwed them over last year because they almost missed it entirely if they would have
Yeah.
lost that game to the Bulls in the eighth seed playing game. But they did make that run. Like Jimmy played his ass off, Bam played his ass off all playoffs long. But like you said, Christy, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, that was like their third and fourth best players throughout the whole playoff run, and they let them walk out of the assumption that they were going to be able to make this Dame trade.
Mhm.
But then they're acting like they have all this leverage, like, oh yeah, Dame only wants to come here, so we don't got to offer
Yeah.
you
Right.
both Nikola Jovic, Jaime Jaquez, and our picks.
Mhm.
We don't want to give up all of that. And it's like, dude, you're getting Damian Lillard. Why are you not throwing the kitchen table at them?
Yeah.
Like, I understand that they didn't really want Hero just because of like their young guys that they have. Like, that doesn't really make much sense for them. But you can find a third team to take Hero. Like, there's been teams that have said they had interest. Like, there was that whole thing with Brooklyn where they were interested in like kind of getting in on the trade and all that. But I don't know what they were doing this whole offseason. They just kind of sat there. Like, they got Richardson in the beginning. Like, I thought that was a pretty decent deal, but it's like he doesn't really solve your issues here. You just
Yeah.
lost your two best, like Gabe Vincent and Max Strus. They're like perfect complementary players next to Jimmy, a guy who's like a point forward type role.
Mhm.
Like they were like their only two like competent shooters in the playoffs besides like Kevin Love, who is I don't think you're relying on Kevin Love at this point in his career. So they're going to need like a lot more production from guys like Haywood Highsmith and Caleb Martin, like replicating his playoff run, stuff like that. Like, they're gonna have to try to. They need to make a move if they want to like stay relevant in the East in the playoffs at least. Like, you got to try to either like move Lowry with like assets and try to do something there,
Yeah.
or something or other like depth moves out. Like, they need to do something. So I don't think that they're gonna I don't think they're a top four team in the East right now as they stand.
No.
not top four, but like looking at the list, it could be close with playoff play in. So there's playoff, Boston, New York, Cleveland. So that's three. Bucks. That's four. I don't know how you feel about the Raptors right now.
Oh
No,
no.
Yeah. All right. We'll just go down the list. How about Nets?
no.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I can see a playing
Uh,
team for them.
maybe
I'm taking no off the top of my head. I'm taking
Indiana.
Milwaukee. I'm
Yeah.
Indy.
taking Milwaukee. I'm taking Boston. I'm taking Cleveland. Shit, I take Philly.
Yeah,
I take
Yeah.
New York over them.
yeah.
All right, so that leaves realistic options: Indiana and Atlanta.
Atlanta, I think. Yeah,
Both of those teams have a chance to be better than them.
yeah. I think Chicago
Yeah,
would probably look
Chicago.
again. I mean, I
Yeah,
seen
it
someone on
depends
Twitter
on their
saying that
health, but
if they get Drew, I mean, I feel like that'd be kind of interesting. You know what I mean? It's like a replacement for Zoe, and then see what they can cook from there. But I mean, I don't know if they get him or not.
I don't
didn't
know if they're
they
trading.
didn't they get some
Yeah,
exception for Lonzo? Like, what was that again? Forgot what that was.
as a disabled
Probably.
player, I think. Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So I don't know how that works, but
I think they
Yeah.
got the
maybe they
same
could.
type of thing last year when I think that's what allowed them to make the Patrick Beverly trade as a deadline. Or not trade, but
Mhm.
sign him.
Yeah, could I mean, barring any injuries with everyone how it is now, could be kind of tight, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Miami probably had like one of the just looking at it from like a whole point of view as a team that just came off of a finals run. I think they had probably the worst offseason in the league out of any
Yeah.
other team.
100%. Easily.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's up there.
they didn't do anything. Yeah, they just sat there. Yeah. But again, like it goes back to what we were saying. It just goes back to like how like confident they were that they were getting Dame. You know what I mean? Like it's just I think that's just crazy. Like in my opinion, like yeah, like you said, I probably would throw everyone like every asset that I have and then look to the free agents list, get like a Oubre, get like a Javante Green, get like a Terrence Davis, try to like spruce it up. You know what I mean? Like there's just so much things you could have done, I guess, in preparation too, that even if the Dame Lillard didn't even the trade didn't even happen, like you could have still had like more serviceable roster, like more of a reliable roster. So yeah, I don't know. That's definitely weird. But before we get off of Miami, do you guys think yes or no? Do you think Hero's still on the trade block or no? Or yes or no?
Dude, I think so. Like, it's just like pretty outrageous contracts. I don't know who would really. I don't know how much you really get for that, but like how much. I guess it comes down to how much Miami thinks he's a win now piece. That's really all I think it is. Like if you're trying to win now with Jimmy at 34 years old, and I mean Kyle Lowry's gone after the season probably, but I don't know. And Duncan Robinson, that's just like a killer contract. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
so. I feel like they're definitely want to try to move off Duncan, but Tyler, I feel like you could get better with him or better a better deal from him at this point. He's only 23 still, but I think so.
I feel like at this point they need him just based on the fact that they don't really have much other reliable guard play on their entire roster.
Yeah.
Like I think Hero's pretty
Yeah,
underrated just because of the value of his contract. Like he's still a pretty good player. He's done like really well in those lineups next to Jimmy and Bam. But at this point right now, he's kind of like their only real like I guess asset now that they're moving away from Dame. That because those Lowry and Duncan Robinson contracts, like you're not really getting anything of value back in a trade for them unless you give up like all your other assets that you were going to throw in for Dame. But Tyler Hero, like he's the only thing that could really get you anything of value back at this point if you're trying to improve your roster right now. So I feel like that's like one of their only options, unless they're just trying to make like marginal moves by like upgrading Jovic or something like that, just using him as an asset. But there's not they don't really have much. Like everybody was talking about how this Miami offer for Dame is like pretty damn bad for a superstar caliber player, but the whole narrative was Dame only wants to go there, so Miami can make it work. Well, obviously, Milwaukee was able to put something on the table that was a lot nicer than what Miami had to offer.
Yeah.
So, like, what is Miami getting?
Damn. I mean, it's spitting right now. But I mean, that is fair. I mean, I think as far as Hero goes, like yeah, I mean both of y'all are right. I think for right now they're definitely gonna roll with him just because they don't have shit, as far as guards go. They don't have another like, playmaker, ball handler. You know what I mean? I wouldn't really count Lowry like you guys said. Like it's I don't know, his raps, I feel like. And then I'd keep him around for now if I was or what I think might happen is might keep him around for now and then see what's kind of there closer to the deadline, see what they can attach him to. Like, you know what I mean? I think if they play the cards right, they could still get something of value. And I think the bigger question is really, I think, is how much or how upset is he with the whole situation? Because we saw throughout the offseason how weird it was, because everyone could talk about was Dame Lillard going to Miami, and it was all confirmed and all that. And Hero's like, talking about, or like his whole like attitude was like he's ready to leave, you know what I mean? Like it looked like his time was over. So I think there's definitely gonna be a rift, I feel like, between him and the team. So it's definitely gonna be a good situation to monitor, because I still feel like a team like Brooklyn might still be, interested. Who else was, I guess, curious? Someone else was picking up calls on him too, right? It wasn't just Brooklyn, it was someone else.
I think
Uh,
Brooklyn was the main one, but I forget who else.
yeah, it was some other team. I forgot, but
Yeah.
like I don't know. I feel like Miami definitely has options when it comes to that. But yeah, definitely gonna be interesting to watch. What the hell they're gonna do. But as far as Phoenix and Portland go, I mean, I feel like we could probably just get Portland out the way.
Yeah,
Just
I'll,
because
I'll
I feel
just
like.
I have like the details of the full trade here, so I guess we could just say that to kind of move into the Blazer side of things.
Mm.
So obviously the Bucks got Dame. Phoenix got Yusuf Nurkic, Nasir Little, Keon Johnson, Grayson Allen. So just like basically moving on from Aiton in return for just depth in general. And then Portland gets Drew Holiday back, who they're, like Aaron said earlier, most likely going to flip at some point, maybe not right away, but at least before the deadline for other assets. That's probably like the main reason that they preferred this trade over the Miami one. Just they're getting stuff back, and then they could also get more back from trading Drew as well. And then they get Aiton, who, is still like an above average center, still pretty young. So he's kind of like a guy you can have with those young guys. You can still develop with your young core that you're bringing up. And then they get Tumani Kamara, who personally I don't really know too much about him. I'm pretty sure he was a second round pick for them. For I think he was a second round pick for the Suns last year, if I'm not mistaken. And then they get a 2029 Milwaukee first, and then 2028 and 2030 Milwaukee pick swaps. So I feel like that's like kind of what put their deal over Miami's, just the 3 picks from Milwaukee down the line. Those could end up being pretty valuable based on just the fact that, we still don't really know what's going on with Giannis and his situation. And then their cores, Milwaukee's got like the oldest core in the league right now. So by that time, those picks could look pretty good.
Mm.
Yeah. I think for now, Portland. Well, I think at this point, with all the talks with Miami, like we're not interested in Miami's assets. I mean, I don't think anybody was really expecting a trade like this to happen. I, for one, think that they did get a good haul. Let me pull it up real quick. Or can you repeat what they got again? It was
Portland,
Drew Ayton,
Drew
the
Ayton,
29 pick. Yeah.
2028 and 2030 pick swaps, first round pick swaps
Hmm.
from Milwaukee.
I mean, can you be mad at that? I feel like you really can't. Like you got rid of Nurkic. I don't know what his contract was like
Yeah,
on
that's
top of
another
my
big
head.
part of it. Just shedding
Yeah,
Nurkic's
so
money.
yeah, shedding Nurkic was a good W, and you got Aiton, who's relatively young still and still has a lot of potential. He has a new fresh start somewhere else now, and I mean I'm kind of happy with that. And plus with Drew, I feel like you still got a lot of potential to get something out of him too. I was seeing before we got on there what like obviously we saw like Philly as an option. I don't know what they could really offer. Yeah, I don't know how much you like that. But I was also at a 3-team trade um with the Clippers, sending Harden to the Clippers and something going to Philly and between Philly and Philly getting Drew and Philly letting go of like Tobias or something. I don't even know how that would work. But I don't know. I still feel like they can get at least like maybe potentially a first. It depends where he's going. Like if it's a good playoff team, he's a good fit anywhere. So like you could fit him. He's an all time NBA defender. Like and you could really stick him anywhere and he would work for you as a playoff team. So I feel like a playoff team, somebody would be able to give Portland something that they could, use for a rebuild, continue the rebuild. But for now, like this year in general, I don't think they're, really really expect much. Maybe if they're like the younger guys pop off, like Utah did last year, they can make the play in or something. But I mean, it's a good start for a rebuild, I think. So
Yep, for sure. Better than anything. Like I said, it's better than anything that they were like rumored to get before that. So, like, I
yeah,
would
like
take that.
I would take Aiton over like Hero or something right now.
And then also, I saw a thing about in terms of like Drew, where he could potentially end up. I saw like people saying that Dallas could have interest as well, which would be interesting. Like them trading like a combination of like Tim Hardaway's contract, probably like I don't really I guess another contract, and then like their picks that they were trying to offer to get like I saw they were in the mix for Buddy Hield as well. So I guess like Dallas is looking to make a trade before the season starts as well to kind of bolster their guard depth as well.
So
That
they
is
might
very
do
interesting.
for Dame. I mean for
For
Drew.
Drew.
I like that. Would they start him at the 2 then, and then Luke at the 3 or something like that?
Yeah, they could do that. It's basically what they were doing last year with Dallas, because there was one point where they were starting what's it called? They were starting Luka, Brunson, and Dinwiddie together at one point, I think, like a couple of years ago.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And then they start
Who would
Hardaway as well.
be
So.
who would be their starting 4 and 5 again?
What, Dallas?
Yeah.
I would assume Grant Williams probably starting at the 4, and then their center. They have a few options. They're probably. I'm assuming they'd probably just stick with Dwight Powell for now, just because that's what they've been doing for years.
You don't think they'll bring
Grant
Grant off the
Williams.
bench?
For who?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of ugly. Grant Williams in the 4. I'm not really liking that right
Josh
now, but
Green, Maxi Kleba.
I don't think Kleba will close games for sure. I don't think he's never really like started at the 5 though for them.
Yeah,
I don't think they're gonna start the rookie either. What's his face? Derek Lively. They're probably not gonna start him right away.
Yeah,
oh,
maybe
that's
not.
right.
I don't know, man. Definitely gonna be interesting for sure. I mean, that's a big Drew guy. I mean, like Aaron said, you can really plug him in anywhere. He's an All NBA defender, and I'd definitely say like definitely an all time defender too, especially at his 6'5" frame and just the amount of people that he's like locked up and just the amount of two-way play that he gives you. So definitely interested for that, and I think Portland could definitely get a good return on him. Aaron, hopefully it's LA for
JHS.
and like a second round pick.
That was literally impossible. I don't think it's possible for them to trade like for Drew. Like all of our players are like have the December 15th what's it called? That exception, whatever. So I don't think it's possible.
I mean,
unless we
or if
trade
they want,
AD or something. But
we have an up and coming shooting guard. I think his name is Donovan Mitchell. I think he's 26 years old. I think Portland could definitely use a guy like him in their retooling. So if we can get Drew in a return package, that'd be great. I'm actually be very excited for that. But moving on to I guess Phoenix, because that's also like a third part of it. Yeah, it's also like we just talked about it too. Like the Nurkic thing was the biggest thing. Getting off of that contract for Portland was definitely important. And I will say actually before we do move on that people forget that Ayton was number 1 overall pick. I mean, in retrospect, he probably didn't, I guess, deserve it, but he still has that talent. So I think if Portland's getting a number 1, at the end of the day, they're getting at least a lottery level center who actually has a lot of skills. So I think for them it was a really good trade. But flipping the perspective to Phoenix's side, I just really don't understand it. You know what I mean? I think Nurkic has kind of fallen off ever since those late Denver days, the early Portland days, in terms of just the injuries that he's had. He's just, like a step slower than everybody else. He can't close games. He's slow. He's too big. I don't really know what they're trying to cook there with that. I guess, they got some other good depth with Nasir Little, which I'm a huge fan of. I definitely like his game a lot, especially way back when, in like I think 2018, 2019 when we got drafted. So they got other good pieces coming in for that. So it's not a complete loss. It's just, I think just bringing in Nurkic to replace Ayton's role is definitely very, very questionable, just because I feel like another thing you got to consider too. I mean, I get it. They have, 3 dominant ball handlers now on that team, but I still feel like that's a team that would want to, try to get out and run a little bit more. You know what I mean? Trying to be a little bit more faster. I just don't know what Nurkic gives you apart from, I guess, like pretty good like screen setting and stuff like that. So uh, definitely gonna be a situation to monitor too. Because I mean, we talked about it in our previous podcast episode too. It's like uh, they bounce back in a big way in terms of their roster. I think we all thought like, you know, their roster would just be gutted and they had like nothing at all, but the just amount of talent they've been able to pick up in the margins, they didn't really have to spend too much. And, you know, they got some good talent. And like I said, even with this trade, they got some good talent back. It's just, you know, with the center position, it's like, what will Nurkic really provide I guess is the main question. And at the end of the day, Aiden's still a pretty talented center, pretty competent center. He'll still give you some, you know, serviceable minutes. So I guess my question is like, just what were they cooking? I know Steve, I know you didn't like, you know, the whole Nurkic return, but I see from the perspective of like comparing like those two as a player, and when it comes down to it, it's like I think Nurkic, what he brings now is just not too ideal. It's not something that you would want to pick up, especially for a younger guy in Aiden that still have the hope to kind of like, you know, bring up to speed and still talk him into certain things. So I think as far as that trade goes for them, it's weird, but I don't like completely hate it because, like I said, it's, you know, they're being a third team, is they're not the centerpiece of the thing. They're still getting some quality depth back. So, um, actually, my bad. Can we repeat what Phoenix got in return again?
Yeah. I thought about it a lot more since my initial reaction as well. And I'm not going to say that I like it for Phoenix either, but I kind of understand it a little bit more. They're getting back Nurkic, Nasir Little, Grayson Allen, Keon Johnson.
Yeah, like
So
that's solid right there. I'm just saying, like, as far as the center play goes, like I just don't know what they're trying to cook because, I mean, who's their backup center again now?
Drew Eubanks, which I completely forgot they picked up, which is why I kind of
Yeah. Well, that's a good pick. Yeah,
understand it a little bit more now.
yeah,
Just
that's
because they're not really relying on Nurkic all that much. Like I don't think he's probably going to play more than like 24 minutes a game with them, just because they have other options as well.
yeah.
And they're probably going to go small more often than not to close games. But I think the main thing is just the fit. Whereas you can't really, I feel like they were kind of like checked out on Aiton just because of his lack of motor these last two seasons, ever since their finals run. Just the fact that he's like kind of demanding the ball for his development away from guys like KD and Book last season. So like Nurkic is kind of like a more, at least in that starting lineup, he's a more natural offensive fit. Just because, like you said, he's a really good screen setter. Like he's done really well on offense with Dame and CJ in the pick and roll these last however many years with Portland. He's kind of like a good quick decision maker in the pick and roll as well. When he rolls and he gets it, he can make he's pretty good at making like quick decisions to get it to guys in the corner and stuff like that. So like offensively, it's a more natural fit just because he's going to be applying more rim pressure in those pick and roll situations than Aiton would. Whereas Aiton's kind of like just stopping it to take like a 15-foot jumper or post up. Nurkic will keep rolling and apply that rim pressure, which is something the Suns have needed for a while now, just because they have a lot of like guys who are more so like mid-range spot up shooters and stuff like that. So offensively, he's a more natural fit. Like obviously, like you said, on defense, he's been pretty atrocious. He gets cooked in the pick and roll. Like that's why I said earlier, like Dame going to Milwaukee is like insane. Going from probably one of the worst pick and roll defenders in the league to having Brook Lopez, who's like the best drop defender in basketball last year. So like, yeah, Nurk, he's not like an ideal guy that you want to have on a championship team as your starting center, but you know, having guys like Eubanks and Metsu now, and you know, being able to go small with KD and like Yuta Watanabe, stuff like that, like it gives them a little bit more relief. But you know, they have several options, Bowl as well, if they want to experiment with that. So you know, they have several guys that they could throw in, and I'm sure they're going to do a lot of experimenting with their lineups to start the season, just because they have so many guys that they just picked up in the offseason.
Yeah.
So I also kind of like the Grayson Allen thing too, just because he's a much better upgrade over guys like Damian Lee, who are probably going to project to get minutes for them. Just a much more reliable spot up shooter, a better like on ball defender than Damian Lee, or who's the other guy they have off their bench? I completely forgot that they have Eric Gordon too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot Barry Gordon. Yeah.
But yeah, like I don't know. I kind of and like you said, Nasir Little, he's probably going to be in their rotation now, so they just have a lot more options off the bench for different nights.
Yeah.
Let me say something, or let me ask something. But don't you think? I mean, Nurkic as a scorer, yeah, but defender, like especially in the paint, oh, especially in the perimeter, at least, you could probably get played off there at some point. So I feel
Oh
like,
yeah, for sure. If they
so
put
I
Beal
feel
and
like,
Nurkic in a pick and roll, they're getting cooked.
yeah, like I feel like in the playoffs or something, if you go against a Denver Nugget team, Jokic or
Oh, mhm.
somebody like that, like I feel like at that point you're still gonna get played off the floor. And like I've seen there would be suggestions of like KD at the five because I mean you're not really that confident in Eubanks or Bol. Well, I forgot was even there honestly too.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy to think about. But like I don't know. Like you have him as a scorer, but do you really need him? Or are you really counting on him when you have Beal, Booker, KD? Like there's only one basketball to go right. Obviously the pick and roll could be pretty lethal with like you're not obviously not going to leave KD open or trying to sag off or any one of those guys I mentioned, but I feel like at some point it's just going to be he's going to be there on the roster, but he's going to be played off the floor because he can't switch on to anybody on the perimeter as well. I mean, Aiton was more mobile at least, that's somewhat,
Oh yeah,
but
for
I
sure.
mean, I don't know. Like I feel like this isn't an upgrade. It's like a more so lateral move. I mean, it wasn't for the centers. I feel like they mostly did this for the depth, but because I think Grayson Allen is kind of decent, at least to have off the bench too. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I can't remember what the other trade rumors were like before he signed the extension he had, but I feel like you could have gotten more earlier. But I feel like they just necessarily do this for the depth rather than Nurkic. But if you're looking at Nurkic for Aiton, then I don't think it was a good decision. I mean,
Oh no.
he's really there for scoring and being a big body to rebound. But like defensive wise, I feel like they could have addressed that better. But yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, the move was more so just sacrificing DeAndre Ayton, and in return, I mean, the main thing is like they're saving money for years to come now, just getting off that Ayton deal. Like they signed Ayton to that 5 year max. He was not producing at a max level, so
Yeah.
that kind of gives them more flexibility cap wise. And then just although we did talk about it on our last podcast, the additions that they made in the beginning of the offseason, like they're solid for the price they got him at. Like just only having minimums to throw at guys, they did a pretty decent job. But still, like they're not guys that you're relying on night in, night out in a playoff run. So having a few more reliable guys than the guys they already had is kind of like what they're banking on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Just like rather than having like a going into the playoffs with like a 7 man reliable rotation, now they have like maybe 8 or 9 guys that they can count on if they need to throw different guys out there for different lineups. Like
Yeah.
just gives them a little bit more flexibility come that time. And like you said, Nurkic definitely is going to get played off the floor in several matchups. So having a guy like Nasir Little that you can throw an extra wing out there that you can hopefully rely on, that's something that they're banking on.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I was gonna say, yeah, like, so my main thing, another thing I want to say actually real quick was, I feel like Nasir Little does deserve more love, and I feel like low key Portland quietly did develop him into a pretty good,
Mm-hmm.
pretty nice wing player. I think he was obviously like, expected to do a lot more, but in terms of like what he kind of get drafted into situation wise, I feel like they, got him to play like, good in terms of like a proverbial wing. But moving on in terms of like, well, my, I guess like quote unquote issue with the trade, is I guess it's more so like with a talent like Aiton, I feel like well, actually, I guess it doesn't really matter anymore, obviously. But my main thing was my entire thought process before this trade happened was like I think I would have kept Aiton and then like waited for a disgruntled player or like much more of a better, I guess, center to come along.
Embiid.
Just kind of like, huh?
Embiid.
Embiid. Just something that they could probably try to like swing for type beat. You know what I mean? But that's the thing too, because it's like more of a lateral move. I feel like the depth that they got in general was pretty ideal. So I guess it's giving up 8 and 4, you know, Nurkic and other players and like thrown into it makes sense. So it's fun. That's why I'm not like mad at it anymore per se. It's just I feel like coming into this whole situation with Ayton, I think my whole thought process was like, all right, I feel like Phoenix is gonna wait around, maybe wait until closer to the deadline to see who's upset, see what they can get cobbled together. Because at the end of the day, like I said, it's still lottery talent. So I feel like a team would have eventually probably would have been like, all right, we'll give you X, Y, Z. Maybe you could have maybe tried to get like a Bogdanovich with it or something like that. You know what I mean? Just that's what my expectation was. But I feel like as far as what they got, what they are setting up for is perfectly fine. But another thing, like we just said, like I feel like their overall roster talent, overall roster depth is like it's just so good to the point where, it's something like this is not like something that's earth shattering, but it's just a lot more reinforcing. And I feel like KD and Booker and those guys definitely feel like a lot more, confident, a lot more able to go out and play with the second unit or third unit, see what they can do and mix and match lineups. So, yeah, I think as far as the value that they got for Ayton straight up is what I guess like it's not what I expected, and that's why I always had like an issue with it. But apart from that, like I feel like they did their job. I feel like all three teams did their job basically. It's going to be curious to see what Portland does from here on out in terms of flipping, Drew and see where they go from there. But yeah, I think it's definitely going to be an interesting race. I think. I mean, as far as the East goes, I don't think it really changes much because at the end of the day, I think it's still going to be Milwaukee and Boston as everyone expects to be the favorites to come out. This is probably tips the scales more towards Milwaukee's favor. But I think as far as the West goes, I mean, I guess more of the same thing. Portland obviously became worse. Phoenix got better. And then, it's still going to be that same, tight race, I guess, at the top, like 4 or 5 couple of seeds. So, but again, it's a good question, like Aaron, like you raised up. It's just in the series against Denver. We saw how Denver dismantled, Phoenix last year. And they only really added a shooting guard who's high volume, not everyone's a huge fan of, you know what I mean? So they didn't really add anyone to kind of combat Denver, or kind of game plan against Denver. It's just more like they just have more functional depth to guys to kind of outscore Denver, if that makes sense. So as far as that goes, I think that's really what it is. I still think my favorites come out of the West. I mean, I'm obviously giving props to defending champs is probably gonna be Denver. As a LeBron fan, hopefully the Lakers are in that mix. If the Clippers are healthy, I can definitely see them doing something. But at the end of the day, I think obviously size matters, pause in today's NBA. So I think ultimately, like if you don't have a way to kind of disrupt Denver's game plan, I think it's always going to be Denver. Like I said, Phoenix is definitely going to be a lot more interesting just because of that depth, just because of the offensive punch that they have. So yeah, definitely going to be interesting. But as far as I guess. I mean, that's a trade as far as it goes, but as far as I guess training camp and all that goes, we touch upon that real quick. In terms of what we're expecting, I guess for our individual teams, just about speaking of that real quick, I just wanted to kind of get my thoughts out there, just because, especially with this trade, you know what I mean. I think as far as it goes, like I was half joking earlier, but I think with a trade like this that goes down, I think it kind of just has the writing on the wall for other Eastern Conference teams. You know what I mean? Like. Again, for the Cavs, like it's just what can we really do this season? You know what I mean? What can we really do? And I think the biggest thing is how do we play the next summer? Because the whole thing with Donovan Mitchell's like his extension talks, and again, obviously not going to sign it right now, but it's just I really don't see a way that the team can compete next year. If I'm being like completely honest, I really don't. So I think my whole big question is like, where do we go from there, and what moves do we make this season to kind of retool and maybe try to pregame and see what's up? Because I feel like Donovan, there's two things. It's like, what can this roster do? And B, like, how much time does he really have, or how much time is he willing to spend? You know what I mean? So I feel like for a team like us, or even like Philly, like obviously Steve, you can talk about it. It's just what do these other teams do from here on out? Because I just feel like for the next like at least like 2 years, it's going to be namingly Milwaukee and Boston, I feel like, and I don't really know what other teams could do to kind of get off of that. I think the only way here forward for those teams I just said is probably like a retool, but that's not gonna, compete, I guess, in the respective conferences. Aaron, as far as the Lakers go, I mean, again, they have a roster that's talented enough to make a run. That's not a question. So I just think it's just weird. I think coming into it as a fan of of the Cavs, it's just you kind of know how the season's going to play out. You know what I mean? Same thing with the Sixers. Like I think you kind of know how it's going to play out. Like I said, I think for the West, it's like a little bit probably a bit more wide open. Even though I think overwhelmingly it still should be Denver, but it's still a lot more in question, a lot more in play. But I think as far as like training camp goes, like I'm excited obviously for the season to start, but this trade did break my heart. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, damn, like all right, like we might be low key back to square one. I think a week ago or even a couple of days ago, I was really excited. I was like, all right, you know what? We could probably do something. We, got, good perimeter depth, shooting depth to kind of take care of the postseason kind of survive, I guess. So, but now that this has kind of gone down, it's a little bit more worrying as far as my opinion. I don't know how y'all feel, but I just think like not even just in the Cavs. I just think other teams like Chicago, Toronto, like what the hell do they do? You know what I mean? Like why are they still clinging on to DeRozan and like Anunoby and all that? Where do teams go from here is my question. I get it. Like I said, it's only probably 2 more years. As far as this like scary thing goes, but it's like at the same time, it's like other teams are also getting older. They also have a chance to like cash in and retool. Like, what do you guys think like is going on? Because I just think like other teams are definitely gonna be a lot more alert. Like training camp's gonna be a lot more competitive and a lot more weirder now. And there's still a lot more names on the table. I don't want to ramble on for too much. I'm just saying, like, I just think as far as from my perspective, I just want to say, like, this is a really weird situation. Like, I feel like a lot of other teams see the writing on the wall. That's just my opinion. But
I mean, it seems like you said with Toronto and Chicago, for example, like we've kind of been talking about that for like the last 2 seasons now, with at least those two teams in particular. Like you guys are kind of in the middle. What is there really to compete for at this point? Like you kind of don't really have the money to spend to really upgrade your team all that much. And then also you have like some young players on each side where it's like if you give them this like the if you focus your team more around them and kind of clear out the other guys, then you can, kind of focus more on their own personal development. Like for example, Toronto with Scotty Barnes, like having guys like OG and Siakam and Van Vliet around Scotty Barnes is like, okay, you're winning games. You made like a postseason. I don't want to say run, but you made the postseason. You got some like playoff game experience in there for him. But like, if they want him to be this like point forward type role, you got to surround him with like guys who can space the floor, or like guys who will ideally be able to help him develop his game. Like you got guys like OG who want more on ball reps, and Siakam who's going to have his, obviously, like he's an all NBA talent. He's going to have his reps. Like, if you really want to move on to that next level with these young guys you've been putting a lot of focus on, then I feel like you should just like kind of cash in those other chips, bring in some more assets, and kind of start like rebuilding / retooling. Like there's really no point in keeping all these other guys around, especially guys who probably want to win themselves.
yeah, yeah,
You bring up the point with like Chicago, and I feel like now in the NBA, it's like there's teams that were like it. I feel like now it's just like championship or nothing really. Like it's besides like if you're like a really young team. Like I never really got the point of teams like Chicago who have like Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan. Like realistically, you're not really doing much with that. Like you're staying afloat, but you're not really, you're not competing, and you're to the point where you're a playing team, so you don't get that high of a draft pick. So it's like you're doing the same thing every year. Like I feel like what's the point? I feel like just holding on to DeRozan is them trying to stay afloat for now. Like I feel like they should have, in general, like explored some kind of trade options for him, and just like kind of just start fresh. Like they obviously had something going before, like while Lonzo was playing, that they were really looking good. But like teams like that in general, I just feel like you got to know when to, like blow it up kind of thing. And there's nothing really like you don't really, you can't really like blow it up to the fact where it's terrible. You still have some pieces you could trade and where you could actually start a nice rebuild pretty fast. But regarding that, I feel like that was always like a thought of mine. Like if you're just a team that's always like Chicago being the prime example still of being the ninth, 10th seed, 8th seed, like you're really just like like just like floating like a boat, just going straight the whole time. You're not really going up or down.
yeah.
I didn't really get the point of that, but in terms of the like you were saying, how this trade kind of put some scary thoughts into you as a Cavs fan. I feel like big blockbuster trades like this always think about like, oh, how can my team compete with that? And obviously, like this is a big player, Damian Lillard, so I can understand what you're saying, but like the Cavs and the Celtics and the Bucks are pretty much favorites in the East, but I mean, the Cleveland. I know you probably don't like the roster right now as it is because you prefer Sexton, all those guys back, but
I mean,
Still crazy.
this roster was a lot better than last year's roster. Like last year,
I mean, no, like I kind of genuinely agree with what you say, but like having that depth now, like seeing how Lowry's kind of going off now, I don't know if he would have done the same, and like to the extent in Cleveland, but I guess like now teams are like they're prioritizing that depth, and I feel like with that Donovan trade, and like you just got to have those big names to really be competing. There's two sides to that, but I can still kind of understand your concern with the whole Dame trade because if we look at it on paper, the Bucks. I mean, you could really argue it with Bucks or Celtics. Like, could you really compete with those teams on paper? Those with your best five and their best five. So I feel like your concern is like, yeah. I mean, you can go for it like real quick. Like you got Garland, Mitchell. These are starting three. Struce, and then you got. I mean, I don't know what's
Mobley,
really going on with Jared Allen, but Mobley, Allen, like that's pretty solid, I guess. But and then you got Dame, Connaughton, I guess, Middleton, Giannis, and Brook. I mean, you've seen it before last season. You don't really have enough to compete with that whole like Jared Allen. I don't like that situation with him at the five. Honestly, not really a good fit for me. But I don't know. And the East is like it's those two teams. The West, I feel like it's kind of wide open. But because I think Denver is still they should be respected. But they lost Bruce Brown. They lost a couple of pieces. So like I feel like they never really got replaced really. But I don't know. I think there's going to be a lot of questions that are going to be answered soon. But I think is media day the same day for everybody else, or is that like an individual thing?
I think it's like over the span
So-
of a couple days for each team.
I think it's next week, right? Isn't it?
Should be.
No, yeah, 'cause
Usually
I
right
know the
before training
Lakers
camp.
is October 2nd. I think that's Monday, and then training camp is after that.
Yeah, I think it's a general date because I think they also
So-
have to submit the pictures for like ESPN and stuff like that. So
Yeah, because I mean we can get a lot of questions answered there in terms of like lineups, rotations, all that. People are gonna play and stuff like that. So I feel like there's gonna be a lot more questions answered. And like I mean, God forbid, like this isn't we talk about this every year, how at the beginning of the year, like everyone has like, all these like flaws or all these weaknesses and that people have their strengths too, but like you just never know what's gonna happen. Like you just day one, like Gordon Hayward type injuries, like unfortunately those things happen. So as time goes on, you never know. But I mean, as of right now, it's gonna be Boston and Milwaukee. But if Giannis could stay healthy, he's had some injury troubles in the past. Dame has had some injury troubles in the past. Middleton obviously too. So if that team could stay healthy, then definitely. But you just never know. I feel like.
that's fair.
Just a few
Yeah.
notes real quick about what we were talking about before with like how Aaron said it was like for at least for those middling teams in regard to that, like how it's championship or bust nowadays. I don't completely agree with that. I feel like it's more so the reason we talk about Toronto and Chicago so much with that is just because they've been kind of in that position for years now in the middle where and they don't really have like crazy young, like obviously they have like some young players that they're really high on, like for like Scotty Barnes for the Raptors, Patrick Williams example for like the Bulls, stuff like that. But they don't really have like crazy young cores. So the catching in those veterans who have like year after year, they're not able to get the job done to put you over the hump to be a contender. Like cashing in those chips for assets, giving them to other contending teams, that makes more sense for them. Whereas there's some teams each year that end up making the play-in, such as like this year, like in the East, for example, like the Pacers, the Magic, they've been bad for like the last couple of years now. So making the plan with their young rosters, kind of putting their
Oh,
pieces together, that would kind of be a bigger deal for them. Like obviously they don't
n-
think they're going to win a championship, but like kind of showing that their young players are like more cohesive, putting together like a roster where they're kind of building together and
I
getting some
agree.
experience in. That's like goes a long way for them.
I do agree with that. Like real quick, it's just the teams where like Chicago is just like the prime example of like
Yeah,
you have teams where you're just in that kind of like same position where you're getting aging and older. Like I just don't understand why at this point just rebuild. Like I don't understand. But like teams like that where it's like Orlando, Indiana, teams like that where they're young and they're actually trying to compete. Like and in the West too, like you got like teams like the Spurs. You actually have a young core that could actually compete. Like go for it. But teams that are in that middle, I just don't see why you just start over at this point. It's been so
yeah.
long.
Yeah. I
And by the
mean,
way, I do think that the Cavs are an Evan Mobley offensive leap away from being true contenders.
I do agree. I 100% agree with that take. I'm just saying, like,
But do
I
you
don't
think
know.
Allen's fit is there though?
I think his fit is there as long as it pretty much just depends on Mobley's development. If
Yeah, I feel
Mobley
like
can't
if Mobley
develop,
gets his jump shot going, I think the Allen thing is fine. It's just,
yeah, exactly.
and another thing, I will say this, like, before we wrap up, like, I don't want to, like, I'm not going to sound like a prophet or whatever, but I didn't really know about Jared Allen until we got him. But like, I think the best way I can describe him is like one of those like those like Nintendo nerd players. You know what I'm talking about? Like, I don't want to have like the STEM nerds. Like, listen, I love Jared, right? But I think that there was like so many like off-season videos that dropped, and it's like he's a great guy. But the one question I had when we first got him, I was like, is he like for real about it? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he's got like blocks, he's like strong, he's like athletic and stuff. But like the one thing I always kind of considered about him was his motor. And I think listen, to his credit, I think there was some scheme stuff that JB did in the playoffs that kind of screwed Allen over. I think like I didn't even notice until the chase down guys talked about it, but apparently I think they had like Allen come out on the screen, so like he was always out of position in terms of rebounding and all that, and then like rotating over for help defense. So that is like a side of it. But the one thing I've always like asked about him was more so his motor, and I feel like if you can kind of get the motor figured out and kind of get his strength figured out, I feel like he'll be fine. Another thing is, like I said, the Mobley jump shot and like the whole offense and stuff like that. I think like it's also on the coaching staff to be more creative, I guess, in terms of offense too. Like, I was watching a couple breakdown videos on how like Miami kind of has like Bam do handoffs in the perimeter and stuff like that. You know what I mean? If you kind of like spice stuff up like that, you know what I mean? Like just add that instead of just pick and rolls or just lobs. Like I feel like we'd actually be in a better chance. Um, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, the team's cooked, like throw everything away. It's just
You're
it.
limited offensively with him in there.
Yeah, you're limited offensive with him in there, and I think well, my whole thing was like last year with the point of saying like, okay, we had a core, and then like majority of the team got injured, and then we were still a playing team, right? I think the team just got too trigger happy too quick, and we put our chips in for Donovan Mitchell. It's not like the fact that I hate getting Mitchell. It's just I think my whole thing was I'd rather have waited and let like a Milwaukee and Boston kind of just kill each other. You know what I mean? And kind of let our guys develop on the background, and then we kind of just take it. You know what I mean? So, but the thing is now with that now that Donovan Mitchell's extension's coming up, and again another year, in my opinion, is going to be another year of an early exit. And how confident will he be in the team? How confident will the team be in him? All of that. It's just that's my personal thing. You know what I mean? Like I said, even with the Sixers too, it's just like what do they do from here? Like what does Embiid feel? You know what I mean? So it's like even if the Drew trade does go down, as big of a Drew fan that I am, like will that be enough? You know what I mean? I don't know if it will be. So it's just stuff like that. It's not even like just about like those mid teams. And I do agree. It's like teams like Chicago and Toronto, like if they've been doing it for a minute, they gotta change it up. But yeah, for teams like Indiana and Orlando, that's like a measuring stick for success. So they're fine. But it's just I feel like for certain teams, they just gotta look in the mirror and kind of see what they do. And I feel like to that extent, or to that credit, I feel like you might see a changing of a landscape a lot more. The East might be a lot more, a lot more unpredictable now. So definitely am excited for that. It's just as a personal like Eastern Conference team fan who's supposed to be in that upper echelon guaranteed playoff team, it's just a little weird to think about right now. But definitely going to be interested to watch just to see how the team kind of performs, I guess, for the season. So definitely going to be tuning in. Like I said, like last year I was kind of hard to be excited for the year just because I wasn't a huge fan of the roster. We just added Donovan, that was it. We didn't really address anything else, so it was kind of hard. But again, this year we added Niang, Strus. We got what's it called? We had Ty Jerome, who I'm kind of personally excited for, Damian Jones and Tristan Thompson. So it's like I feel like a more complete team. And we'll probably do like an individual team breakdown later on. I guess as preseason opens up. But yeah, I'm just saying as a closing remarks go, it's definitely gonna be a lot more interesting this year just because I feel like for a lot of the teams who are not Toronto or not Milwaukee and Boston, it's like, okay, the writing's on the wall. You know what I mean? So I feel like as far as movement goes, I feel like I would it's not a crazy statement to say that like movement is going to be happening. You know what I mean? So and I hope like I said, I just hope front office just be realistic. Like, come on now. You know what I mean? Like it's just what it is. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys have anything else to say. I mean, we're coming up in an hour, I think, on the episode, but yeah, any closing remarks, anybody?
Closing remarks. Now that the whole Dame saga is over, I'm kind of just happy that he didn't end up in Miami, just because I feel like it would have been so anticlimactic if we just knew from the very start, like, oh, he demanded to go to Miami, and then we gotta wait like 3 months for this whole thing to play out, and then it just ends up him going to Miami for the rumor deal from the very start.
Yeah,
I'm kind of glad like someone else came in and picked him up, just so that it like spiced everything up. Just because, like I said before, it has been this offseason more than others in recent memory has been just so bland and boring as an NBA fan, just because there really has not been much going on.
Yeah.
Christian Wood, that happened.
For sure. I mean, a lot of good like depth signings happen. I'll say that for sure, but like nothing crazy or like.
I just mean like in terms of just in general, like there was just like a month and a half to 2 month period where nothing happened after like the first like 2 weeks of free agency.
Yeah.
And then like all of a sudden that one night, just out of nowhere, Christian Wood and Danny Green both signed with the Lakers and Sixers on like the same night, just out of nowhere. Yeah. I was like, okay.
Dude, I'm kind of surprised Danny Green still like. I'm kind of surprised he still got a spot, honestly.
I mean, listen. To be fair, he didn't look terrible considering the context. Like last year, like with us, like
he looked pretty bad.
Injury. It hasn't even been a year yet, and he was like,
I know, but like again, like at his age, coming off like an ACL tear, it's pretty serious.
Right.
So I'm like, I was still like kind of surprised the team reached out. I mean, I don't know if he's going to get any minutes.
He's probably going to play for us just because we don't have wings off our bench.
Yeah, the options, yeah.
Yeah, see, that's an issue. I mean, like as a veteran guy, like to be like a like a
locker room
leader,
presence,
that's great.
Sure, I'll take him. But he's going to be playing for us probably.
Yeah,
I feel like he's going to be serviceable, bro. Like in like limited minutes, like I wouldn't hate it. Like I wouldn't. Just based on what I've seen, me personally, and like I said, like Aaron, you know too, like your PT, like I feel like ACL like injuries haven't they kind of went down in terms of like severity and all that. I mean, he's obviously older, but
that's what I mean though.
Just based on what I've seen is like I'm just saying like it hasn't even been like a full year since he came back and played with us, and he still has some like solid moments here and there. So I feel like if they just give him like a X amount of minutes a night, just like a limited minutes here and there, I feel like it ain't terrible. Like I'm not like mad at it. You know what I mean? And they got Oubre too. I like Oubre. And to the Miami point, I don't want to drone on for long.
He doesn't.
I don't want to draw on for long. I'm just saying, like me personally, I wanted to see him end up in Miami just because I want to see him and Jimmy team up. But on the other end of the coin, Embiid to Miami is still a very realistic thing, and I can't wait for that. And Jimmy and Embiid, baby, let's get it rolling.
If we get Bam back, they can have him.
Nah, you get Thomas Bryant and Jaime Jaquez back, and you'll like that. That's the max. No truce.
Yeah, I mean, we could do like a.
Kelly Oubre would have all the Philly girls going crazy.
Oh yeah, for sure. Him and Maxey, and then Sirianni at half. What's it called? On the what's it called? Floor seats.
Yeah, and then Jason Kelsey there
going
too.
Crazy.
Daddy.
Yeah, and that hurts.
Aaron, just before we wrap up, what are your thoughts on Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift getting together?
I don't care, actually.
Aaron, you happy? Look what I'm wearing on the NBA podcast. Look what I'm wearing.
Oh, fire. It's
that was a test. You were supposed to say you don't care as well.
Yeah.
I generally don't. Like, it's so annoying. It really is. Like, but I mean, as I was saying before, we could like do the team breakdowns on a separate podcast. Like I know the Lakers play on who plays? Someone plays before that. I think it's Dallas and
Yeah, Dallas
somebody.
and I think it might be like an international
Are they
team.
playing like? Don't they play in like Asia or something?
No, they're playing Madrid. But
No,
I
they're
don't know if
playing
it's the
Madrid,
first
but they're
game.
playing another international team like October 5th.
Oh, you know.
Hang on.
Yeah,
let's
I
see.
know the Lakers
no,
first
never
game was
mind.
against the Warriors.
It's Dallas,
Oh,
Minnesota, but
that's what it was.
but the game is being played somewhere. Where? Oh, it's in Abu Dhabi.
Oh, yeah, 'cause
Yeah.
it's like an earlier game, right? It's like 1 o'clock or something
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
noon,
Yeah.
noon Eastern time.
Yeah. I don't care,
I'm,
bro. Basketball's back. I can't wait, bro. Like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm about to die.
yeah, I'm down to do a roster or like a kind of expectation episode kind of thing where we think what's going to happen with our teams, especially also, but
We could do
it's coming soon.
We could do the annual over/under predictions. That'll
Yes,
kind of all tie into that.
Yes, Sirski. And we got some
Yeah,
big
the
plans coming
standings
in.
predictions.
We got some big plans. Maybe a sports book. Maybe a
Sports
live
book?
in-person sit down podcast. But we got plans. We're gonna try to cook some stuff. We'll get back to y'all. Follow our Twitter in the meantime at the Floor Spacers Podcast. We haven't said Jack in a minute, but with these potential moves coming up, we might be hopping back on that. But definitely some interesting things on the horizon. So definitely stay tuned for that. We can't wait. And as always, guys, thank you to our German listeners. Danke schön. Buenas Ziegler. Thank you so much. Shout out to our Ruben listeners. I hope y'all having fun down there. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah. And then thank you guys, everybody else, for listening, for making it to this long ass podcast, but it was well warranted. It's been a minute since we had an episode. It was a blockbuster of trade. So thank you guys so much for listening. Either on
Also,
YouTube,
Sean Jacob have fun in Milwaukee.
Sean Jacob, have fun in Milwaukee. There's a store that you need to hit up and get some groceries. So that's definitely part of the plan. But yeah, guys, thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you guys in maybe, potentially, hopefully, inshallah, a crazy new format. But